All right, welcome back to another episode of the Unprofessional Entrepreneur. This week I am very excited because I am joined by my longtime internet friend Samantha, and we are talking about one of my favorite topics, and that is messaging. Samantha is I feel like we have like similar lifestyles in that we're like living around the world, but you're in way warmer countries than me, so I'm jealous right now. But if you want to let people into a little bit about you, how you got into messaging, and yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much, Felly, for inviting me. I'm super excited to chat. And yeah, it's so funny. We have been like these abroad duo for a while. A little bit about me. So yeah, my name is Samantha Hoilett. I'm a sales messaging strategist and launch copywriter. I started my business when my husband and I moved to Uganda from DC back in 2018, which is getting increasingly further away. and I started out doing like copywriting and, copywriting projects. And I was realizing this massive gap with my clients where they wanted me to help them figure out what to say, how to connect to their clients, how to communicate their offer value. And I was realizing that that's really the step that needs to happen before the copywriting starts. That's your messaging work. And so I was like, I think I need to like branch out and like include this service so that people have those foundations so that their copy actually converts. And yeah, that's pretty much how I got into like the messaging and the copy side of things.
I love that because I feel like it's very similar to my story where I was like general VA, content writer, and then content repurposing because these people, they're out here being like, fix all my problems when they hire you. And I'm just like, okay, but you're asking for things that I can't do. Like, if I'm a content writer, it's not my job to give you your entire marketing strategy. Like, it's not my job to come up with your messaging, you know? So like switching to content repurposing was like a necessity of like, how can I create the best content possible without like going above and way beyond my scope of work, right? And I feel like that's really similar with like the messaging for copywriting because it's like, okay, you've hired me to write this copy, the sales page, whatever they've hired for, but like if they give you nothing, you have nowhere to start. And I think people forget that with service providers that like you need to give me something to get started. So yeah, I feel very similar in our journeys.
Yeah, it's so true because like I just remember this one client I had and I think she really sparked it for me because it was like, I was asking her that kind of messaging foundational questions like, well, who is your audience and who is this offer for and what do you want to be known for? And she was just like, I thought you would help me figure all of that out. I thought you would just like learn about my business and write it down for me like a copywriter. And I'm like, yeah, but there are things that a service provider cannot decide for you.
Yeah.
And of course you can hire a strategist to like support you in making those key decisions, but like the decisions are yours. Yeah, before you hire out.
Yeah. And like, I think I speak for all service providers everywhere when I say, like, you are doing God's work because that is the only requirement for my agency is that you know your messaging. Because can't, I can't like revamp old content if you still don't know who you're talking to. I can't create content that's going to create results if you don't know who you're talking to. Like, it's
Yeah.
a step.
It's crazy. I mean, like, I think that there was a while where people were just kind of jumping into creating offers, right? Where it's like, okay, I know I want to have a service or a course or a program. So I'm just going to package up my expertise, put a price tag on it, and then just start telling people that this is here for them to buy. And yeah, it's just really missing that first step of who is it for and why do they need this and why should they buy it from you and like how is this different and better than what they're currently doing. Like we need to like know all of that before we start creating content or start launching offers and everything.
I'm all for doing it messy, for like taking the messy action of like, okay, I might start with this messaging, and if I see no one's responding, I'll evolve it, I'll tweak it, I'll like test a couple, like A/B test my messaging to see what's getting answers. But you still need the direction to have to test something, you know, like if you have no direction of who it's for, why it's different, why they need it, like you can't speak to anyone like that.
Yeah, and like people need clarity from you on who this is for and how it helps, and if they don't have that, how can you expect them to, you know, actually buy?
Yeah. Okay, I want to talk about mistakes because I feel like messaging is something that either people obsessively think it's my messaging, it's my messaging, it's my messaging, or they try to band-aid solution it and they think it's my content, it's my pricing, it's the algorithm, and they refuse to look at their messaging. So from your point of view, who gets like hired for this and talks to people about this all day, what is people's common mistake when it comes to messaging?
I think their common mistakes are, like we were just saying, kind of like laying those foundations for your messaging first, right? Because I think once you take the time to actually lay those foundations of who your offer is for, how it helps, the value that you're providing, what makes it different. Once you like lay those foundations down, you feel confident that like, okay, I'm going to go forward and test it. Like you were saying, I'm going to go and like actually like see what works and see what resonates. And I think that's like, it's really that kind of repetitive and iterative cycle of like, you know, putting things out there, seeing what sticks, but knowing first of all that you have like put thought into what your messaging is. And I think that's where people start to do band-aid solutions where it's like, oh, well, let me just like make a quick change to the top part of my sales page, or let me go like tweak my Instagram bio. And it's like, well, if you, again, like made those foundational decisions first, you would know how to create everything to show up and like sell in your business.
Yeah, and I feel like especially when it comes to messaging, like again, like with content repurposing, with omnipresence, being on multiple platforms, having that consistency of your messaging across all the platforms makes a huge difference. Like if you're showing up on Instagram being like, I do this, and then your Threads bio, because this is something I've seen, everybody's Threads bio is not their Instagram bio, and some of them are nothing alike, and I'm just like, I can't tell what you do from your Threads bio, and then I go to your Instagram and it's like you're a whole new person. It kind of breaks the trust for me when people aren't consistent on different platforms, because it's like, what's this face you're presenting over here versus like this new face you're presenting over here? Like, how do I know what I'm going to get if I hire you?
Yeah, I think you should speak more on that, because I feel like the common advice that people hear is like, oh, well, you need to give people a unique reason to follow you on different platforms. So where's the line of how they should show up differently while still kind of being the same?
I'm like, yeah, but I think your messaging, you don't have to use necessarily the exact same words, but your messaging should be consistent in what you're conveying, right? Like my Threads bio isn't the same as my Instagram, but it basically says the same thing. It says, I dig through your content to find the hidden gems, like content repurposing or something, blah, blah, blah. Where like,
Yeah.
I think on Instagram, it's like, show up on 3 platforms without creating anything, you know? And it's like, they're still talking about content repurposing and omnipresence, but like some people's bios on it Threads are literally like, I'm unhinged here, and you know, like, and then you go to their Instagram and it's like this super professional, like, I help XYZ with blah blah blah, you know, and it's like, what? Like, you're unhinged but super professional, and I'm just like, okay, there's got to be an in between to these two personalities.
I love it. I feel like this is the example you gave is perfect, because I think that basically to stay on message, you need kind of three things to be consistent. You need your audience to be consistent. You need your point of view, like your unique approach, to be kind of consistent. And you need kind of the overall result of like your brand or an offer to be consistent. And once those three things are consistent, that's when you can start to play and decide like, okay, I'm going to like try different angles of these three things. So like you said, you know, you help like online coaches and service providers. That's your who. You know, show up on multiple platforms. That's like your result. And then your unique approach is like repurposing and omnipresence. So those three things, no matter where you find Felly, those are going to be the same. And that is like, yeah, like what you said, builds that trust and that consistency.
Yeah. And I feel like you just made it sound super simple. And I feel like nobody else views it as simple.
And this is where, like, again, like, this is like, I think so much of messaging too is just like making a decision and running with it. Because absolutely, I have clients who, you know, we work through their messaging, we do everything from promise to pitch, and then we get to the bottom and they're like ready to start over. And like, by the time we even get to the bottom, they're like, well, what about this other thing? And it's like, no, like, you have to kind of make a decision that this is the direction you're going to run in for at least the next like 30 days. And then come back to rework it. Like, I really believe that you don't know if a messaging is like connecting or even converting unless you have been saying it for at least 30 days.
Yeah. When I was doing marketing mentorship, that was like a really big part of marketing for me, is the experimentation phase of like, okay, we've worked through who you're talking to, we've got your foundations down of like offer, pricing, product suite, platforms, what have you, but now you need to try it. Like, and it's not just like try it and see what people say, but like try it and see if you like it, because like you said, people all the time are like, but what about this, but what about that? And like, I get it all the time because this podcast is called The Unprofessional Entrepreneur. People are always like, but what is that? And I'm like, it's kind of my personal brand, but I'm not there yet. It's like my future personal brand, and it's growing, but like right now my focus is on the agency, so it's like in the background. But it's like all the time people are like, why isn't Unprofessional inside your agency messaging? And I'm like, because they're separate. Like, they're allowed to be separate. But it's always that like thought in the back of like, how can I add the word unprofessional into my agency messaging? And like, what about the word, like, you know, and it's like, what about this and what about that? And what, and it's so easy to have all of those thoughts when you're like, I want to have like a good one-liner to promote my agency. I want to have that good one-liner that's like, cut your conversion time in half, or triple your signups in 30 days. You know, like, we all want that good thing. And then it's like, but what about this part of it? What about the people who don't care about volume? What about the people? And it's like, you can't answer every single objection and desire with one catchphrase or one like slogan, but you have to commit to it. You have to commit to the phrase that is tugging at your heartstrings and test it. And like, if in 30 days you're getting crickets, like, try the other one.
Yeah, for me, that shift was like talking about bold messaging. And I feel like that was my version of like your unprofessional, where it's like, what do people want to be, and like, how do they want to see themselves, and not just like settling for clear and, you know, clear and not confusing messaging, but like, okay, once they are clear, how do they want it to feel? Yeah, and I think that shift of, I mean, this is what I really hope people take away in the end, is that your messaging is so much more than a tagline. It's so much more than a, you know, cute and clever sentence, like, because that one sentence is never going to, you know, communicate everything. Really, you should see it as almost like a banner for like what your offer is or what your brand stands for, and then people are going to look to the rest of your marketing to decide if like you are backing it up with the rest of your messaging. So it's always, to me, it's always like, yes, your offer promise or your brand promise, it's important, but it's not everything. Like, people are going to go and dig deeper, and kind of like what you do with repurposing, they're going to start binging your content. They're going to start seeing like, you know, what else do they have? How else do they talk about this? Like if I don't resonate with this one thing, maybe I'll resonate with the next post or the next email. And so that's why, like, yeah, knowing your overall messaging is so important too.
Yeah, and it's like, even if your one-liner doesn't speak to, I don't know, creative copy or like creative messaging, when you're talking about bold messaging, right? It doesn't mean you can never speak about creative messaging. Like, I know you are really good for talking about, like, don't try and be cute with your messaging, right? Because that's something that it's like a trap I feel like people fall into. They're like, well, it's not catchy enough. It's not cute enough. And it's like, sometimes being clear is more important than being cute. And then, like, once you are really clear, you can like edit it to be a little more bold, but you have to be clear first.
Yes, exactly. It's like cute and clever can be a layer that you add on top, but like if that clear and tangible and specific messaging isn't like built underneath it, like the cute and clever, like it just dissolves really quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I should have asked this first, but I'm going to ask it now anyways. And that is, could you describe what it is that you mean when you say you're messaging?
Yeah. So the way I describe it is that, because I think sometimes people get confused between the difference between like messaging, copy, and content. So the way I describe it is that if your copy and content is like a car, your messaging is like GPS. Mm-hmm. So you want to, anybody can jump in a car and start driving, but you're probably going to take a few wrong turns, waste a lot of gas, waste a lot of time, right? Because like if you don't have GPS, if you don't have messaging as your strategic direction behind your copy and content, like that is how, when you have that, that's how you're going to like know what to say, when to say it, how to say it, who you're speaking to, the goal of every piece of copy and content, like everything that you say, create, and do to sell your offer now has that strategic guidance. So basically, messaging is just like the strategic decisions you make about how you want to communicate your offer, and that guides everything else.
And I don't know about anyone else, but I am a Gemini sun, and communication is my core value in life. So, like, clarity in your communication, guys, is so important. Also, Sam, you're so good at analogies. I did Sam's messaging challenge in like January, beginning of February. And one of the days was like, come up with an analogy for your offer. And I was like, I got nothing. Not my forte.
Yeah, I think for me, I just get to a point where like, I don't know. I think like I like analogies too because they're so sticky. Like I hope that, and a couple days after watching this, people remember, map versus GPS versus a car. Like that makes sense. And for me, they're like, it's almost like a mini storytelling, right? Because it's like something that people can remember.
Fully, but I'm like, my brain doesn't think like that. My brain does not link things. My brain's super literal. So I'm like, repurposing is repurposing.
I always love your Sound of Music example with the curtains and like, changing things up. So there's ways.
That's the extent. That's as far as I've gotten. I got nothing else.
I got one in my pocket and I just shared it. So don't ask for another one.
Yeah, I'm like, even like, I don't know how long ago that prompt was, but like 2 weeks later, I'm still thinking about it. Like, all I got is the curtains analogy. What is a key sign or a few key signs that it is your messaging and not like your content, the algorithm, other things?
Yeah. Signs that it's your messaging. I feel like the main thing is to just like firstly know what goes into good messaging so that you can look for it in your own copy and content. Because for me, I can read somebody's post and I can know if it's their messaging. Because if you are not super specific on who your offer is for, if you aren't super specific in the result that you create, if you are, using really like wishy-washy, vague language like love your business or fall back in love with your life or like have self-trust and just like general like, oh, obviously there's nothing wrong with those things, but if that's all of your messaging where it's really just hard to grasp and it feels very elusive and hard to imagine, well, what does that look like? Like when I spend $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 on this, like why? Like in the end, like why? Then that's when I'm like, it's probably your messaging. And I don't know if this is like going to help somebody, but I had this thought yesterday. I used to love, I still love the movie Aladdin from growing up. And I think about the genie and the scene where like the genie has to like, you know, grant Aladdin's wish, but the genie is also kind of like, okay, don't fuck with me. Like be really clear about what you want, right? And so for me, your messaging is like, could almost like if the result that you create for your clients is like a wish that the genie could grant, would the genie know what to do?
Another
right?
analogy.
So if you say, dear genie, like, please make me love my life, the genie would be like, no, I don't know what that means. I don't know what to change. I don't know what that looks like. But if you say like, dear genie, like, I want to like have less fights with my partner and feel more like cherished in my relationship, that he might be like, oh, okay, I can actually grant that wish because I know what that looks like. So kind of like going through your messaging and asking like, what am I being super clear about what it means to work with me and how life looks different and better after working with me? Because in the end, like that's what people are buying. They might, you know, if they might work with me because they want to sign more clients, not because they want to work on their messaging. They might work with you, Feli, because they want to double their you know, credibility and visibility, not because they care about repurposing. So like always thinking about what's that next thing that they want to do, and are you communicating that, or are you just like have your expert hat on and you're just talking about your expertise?
You're like, mic drop. No, that's really good. First of all, did you like the live action Aladdin?
I didn't even watch it. I like boycott all of these like
Live actions?
live action, like yeah, I'm just like, no, not for me.
I can't remember why I didn't like it, but they changed something in the storyline, and I was like, you can't change the classic storyline. But it was the same thing with the Jungle Book. The live action Jungle Book, they changed the ending, and I was like, not here for it. Anyways.
Like that just makes me angry. So I'm like, no, like I just know I wouldn't enjoy it. I am like such a nostalgia hoe. Like I want the things the way they were. So
I mean,
I don't even watch them.
I think millennials are nostalgia hoes, a word I've never used before. But I'm like looking at the Super Bowls, looking at all these live action Disney Channel movies coming back. Like we love nostalgia, and like there's a reason the 90s bands are still going on tour to this day. But sometimes they mess it up by changing the main plot line, and that is what Disney has done with the live actions for me. I haven't watched The Little Mermaid because I don't want to be disappointed. Anyways, I think that's a really good point for people with the tangibility of like, can Genie grant this wish? Because I am very guilty of like untangible, like I used to use the messaging of like build a feel good business, and it's like, what does that mean? What does that mean, right? So if you are someone new to messaging and you're trying to identify if that's a problem in your content, in your sales content pages, whatever, then definitely look to see if you actually have like a tangible thing people can aspire to achieve. So following off of that question, what is a prompt that you could give someone to make their messaging more bold, to like update their messaging?
Something I've been exploring a lot recently is identity messaging. And this is something that I kind of touched on earlier, but specifically like identity messaging is thinking about like, who does your dream client want to become, and like who do they want to embrace being. And I think that it is so powerful because people are really quick to see themselves in something when you're speaking to that desired identity that they have. And so, Feli and we are both good examples of this because, unprofessional is like an identity. Going bolder is an identity. And even right now, I'm hosting an event which is all about like being a thought leader. And again, that's an identity. You also see the inverse. So, like, releasing perfectionism, not being a people pleaser, dropping hustle culture. These are all like identities that people are very quick to align with and connect to and want to learn more about. And so I feel like, yeah, like exploring like who does your person want to become on the other side of working with you.
Well, I love that. And I think that using emotions in your messaging will take you so far. Like, I think it's not talked enough. It's not talked about enough in content marketing, in my opinion, from like what I see. But like going for the emotions, like when I repurpose content, I ask people like, what's the intention? Like, what action do you want people to take? But it even goes deeper. Like, how do you want people to feel when they consume your content? Like, do you want them to feel like like you're their best friend and you understand them? Do you want them to feel like you're a educator and you have years more experience than them, but you can teach them? Like, do you like what relationship are you trying to build with these people through the words that you're using?
Yeah, and I think that's such a good piece of advice for people is like almost do an emotion edit on your copy. So, okay, you write out your caption or whatever, and then go back and be like, how can I make this a little bolder? How can I make this sting a little? How can I make this really like one step more inspirational? Because I think we underestimate our ability to like really dial it up a little bit. And you don't have to take the first thing you write and publish it. And again, like I'm not advocating for like endless editing and perfectionism, but just read it back through and ask yourself like, would I scroll past this, or would I like stop and like think a little harder? And making the small tweaks that you need to make to actually kind of make your copy and your messaging really stick.
I love that. And the question I would ask is, how can I unprofessionalize it?
Yeah, all the way.
Yeah. Sometimes when I'm like choosing my podcast episodes, I'm like, this sounds so stuffy. And especially when I get pitches, I don't know what happened over January, like New Year's time, but I got so many podcast pitches. And I don't actually take pitches for my show. I only reach out to people because I'm like picky like that. And every single time I get these like stuffy, like, here's how you will like step by step, like boxed in frameworks that people want to bring to my show. And I answer every single one. My show is called The Unprofessional Entrepreneur. I don't want your professional expertise on my show.
Yeah. Like read the room,
Yeah, read the review before you pitch me.
Seriously. I had the same thing because I'm hosting an expert summit now, and just getting topics, like I had I announced like the theme and everything, and people just like dumped with generic, here's what I would talk about. And it's like, yeah, but that has nothing to do with like really like, this is a good practice for your messaging, as well as like put yourself in the shoes of the person who's receiving what you're saying and ask like, is it relevant?
Yeah, like I have pitched hundreds of podcasts at this point. I've been on summits, I've done media features, all the things. I love PR. But I fully understand the value in customizing your pitch. I give the same variation of my pitch, like 2 different pitches basically. It's either like what is content repurposing, how to content repurpose, or the same as my like new lead magnet, which is like the turn 1 into 10 framework of taking people how I actually like literally repurpose content. And like I can change that topic very easily, you know? It's like turn one blog post into 10 pieces of content, turn one podcast into 10 pieces of content. And that works every single fucking time. Like if I just said turn one into 10, people would be like, turn what? You know? Or like, what is content
What?
repurposing?
Why?
Like it's so basic. It's not going to speak to any higher level entrepreneurs who are like the ones I'm more interested in being around, you know? So it's like, I don't know. It's just, it blows my mind how people still copy paste things that have no place being copy pasted.
Yeah. So true. And I think like even with messaging in general, like people are very quick to look to other experts in their space to think about like, well, what messaging is working, or like how would she sells something similar to me, like how is she selling it? And like, you know, it's okay to kind of like scope it out, but like scope it out with the goal of like, how am I going to do things differently? Like how am I going to like, how am I going to communicate this in a way that people resonate with, that isn't already being said? Like what's my unique voice and like take on this? And it's fun. Like it gets to be fun and creative, and like I like messaging because it really forces you to look inward. I think a lot of like entrepreneurship is about like, well, not that it's about it, but people end up, you know, for on purpose or not, like looking at other people and keeping up with like, you know, the people in the space. And it's like, no, messaging really forces you to like sit in a corner and look at yourself and decide like, what am I about? And like, what am I here to say?
Oh, it was a big reason why I shelved my one-on-one mentorship for the time being, because I did a competitor analysis, because I was just like I couldn't stick on anything with my messaging. I kept trying to speak to everything, to everyone, and like then going back and forth and not being happy with any direction I tried to go in. And so I was like, let me see what other people in my space doing like similar one-on-one marketing mentorship are saying. And I audited like 3 different people's messaging, like went through their Instagram, went through their sales pages, and 2 out of the 3 had the exact same messaging as me. And I was like, I'm shelving this. Like, no. Like, I love being an individual. So, like, seeing other people do the same thing as me is like a huge turnoff. And it was instantly like, no wonder no one's buying. I look like every other Betty Sue on the internet, and I fucking hate that.
I know, like that, I hate that feeling. And I think that's honestly like part of why I ended up niching down to messaging as well, is because like I just hated being another copywriter who was like, oh, I'll save you time and make you money. And like obviously my messaging has changed since then, but like I just knew like I cannot just be another, like nope. If I have to do like the same as everybody else, it's like almost to me like, why run a business? Like that's like half the fun, is like, no, what I'm doing is unlike anything that's out there. So that,
I feel like I'm in a league of my own. I'm like, I'm the only content repurposing agency out there. Might not be true, but I don't know anyone running an agency that does content repurposing. I'm perfectly happy with it, and I love being in my own league because it like removes the comparison for me, because that was like the problem with the one-on-one mentorship of you always get that question of like, well, what makes you different than every other person offering marketing mentorship? And I literally didn't know. And because I didn't know, I couldn't express it. And because I couldn't express it, nobody else knew, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, you have to find that lane that you can commit to wholeheartly and like go after.
Yes. For sure. And I feel like this is a common experience I find with clients who sell one-on-one. I think one-on-one is one of those tricky offers to message because it feels, there's a lot of like mindset stuff I think that happens around one-on-one as well, where it's like in mindset in terms of your messaging, where it's like, well, I want to like have a one-on-one that, you know, technically like I could serve a range of clients, I could create a range of results, we could talk about a range of things, and it very quickly, you know, becomes like, I don't know how to like sell this thing. And so I really like to encourage clients when they're thinking about communicating their one-on-one is like, make it yours. Like, what is a result you want to be known for? Like, who is an audience you want to come to you? Who have you enjoyed serving in the past? And just thinking about like making one-on-one really like your own, and know and trust that like people are still going to reach out to you and be like, oh well, I had a slightly different vision, like, and you can just be like, yeah, that's great, come on in. But at least that way, like, you can feel confident like sticking with it and selling it and being like, when you work with me. And I almost see actually one-on-one as like, it's almost like your brand promise, where it's like, if you work with me in the highest touch capacity I have to offer, like, here's what's possible. And just like picking a result and claiming it, and it almost just gets to become like a billboard for what you can do, versus like trying to figure out like, okay, who do I talk to this week and who do I sell to this week for one-on-one. Because that's how I see it, and I have a one-on-one package as well, so like I get that, and I definitely I struggle with it too.
I wanted to ask that. I was like, I know you have one-on-one. I know you're like doing focus on different things right now, but did you come up against the same problems? Did you find a way to like make it easier for yourself with the messaging, with the selling of the offer?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely, in terms of offers I've had to message before, one-on-one was the hardest, I found. And it's for those same reasons about making a decision. And I do think at the end it was kind of like, okay, what I like to think about, like, what kind of problems do I want to solve for my clients? I think that helps too. Because when you start selling desires of like, oh, like, build your business and get more sales and sign more clients, it gets very wishy-washy very quickly. When you think about your expertise, and it's like, what kind of questions do I want my clients to be bringing to me? What do I want to be working on with them? What do I want to be working towards with them? Is there a specific goal they're working towards in the next however long your one-on-one is? Maybe it's 3 months or 6 months. Like, what do they want to have achieved by then? And how do I help them do that? And I think once you start really getting serious about like answering that and being honest about who you actually want to serve in that highest like capacity, then I think it does start to clear up. So
interesting. Very interesting. I'm gonna have to re-listen to this episode. Is there anything else you want to add before I ask my final question?
Ooh. No, this was great. I think, I just hope that people's takeaway is that to go bolder, to be yourself, to look inward, to trust your expertise, to really start asking yourself what you want to be known for, who you want to help, what result you want to be known for, and running with that and making sure that it is clear and specific and tangible and that the genie could grant it. And that's like my summary.
Okay, so the question I ask everyone who comes on this show is, what makes you an unprofessional entrepreneur?
Yeah. I just feel like I just love like doing whatever I want. I don't know. Like, I'm just like, if I have an idea, I'm going to do it. Like, if I have a workshop idea, I'm going to do it. If I have like, I'm temporarily doing a weekly series called like Whiteboard Wednesdays. I just like start doing shit. I don't have a plan. I'm a huge fan of like doing it messy.
Poppy in the wild?
I need to bring that back. The thing, right? It's like, I love just like messing around and seeing what I have fun doing and what my community enjoys seeing. And like we were talking about, having unique offers that nobody else has, doing things our way. Like, for me, that's what it's all about.
I love that. Obviously, I agree, because I cannot be put in a box. I don't want to be put in a box.
Never.
Okay, so tell the people where to find you, what you're up to. I don't know if you have anything you want to like shout out. I'll link all of them in the show notes, so have at her.
Find me on Instagram. I'm on Threads as well at samanthahoilett.writes. And I have a great weekly email series that goes out called the Bold Messaging Diaries. And this is where I'm sharing my best insights on copy, messaging, launching, and more. And that's like a really great resource for kind of ongoing ways you can kind of increase and improve the way you communicate and sell your offer.
Are you starting a blog?
I'm working on it.
I am so like team blog.
Launch is coming. There's like a blog launch that's coming. And the goal of my blog is also going to be like this ultimate messaging resource that anybody can tap into to improve the way they sell.
I love that.
So stay tuned.
All right. Well, thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing everything. And yeah, that's where I'm gonna love you and leave you. And I'll see you all next week on another episode of The Unprofessional Entrepreneur. And always don't forget to stay unprofessional.
Thanks, Sally.